How to tell if an ENTP girl is mature or not. But before I can answer, please consider subscribing to the channel so I can at last realize my lifelong dream of having lunch with Ray Dalio at Chick-fil-A. And hit the alert bell so you can be notified as to when I go live. That being said, what's up, Ego Hackers? I'm C.S. Joseph. This is the C.S. Joseph Podcast, and I am here to answer all your questions on anything Jungian analytical psychology or the four sides of the mind. And the source of today's question is none other than Mr. Aidan Washneys, one of my favorite people ever. Totally dope INTJ bro. And also definitely an icon within the hemp industry. So shout out to Mr. Aidan. I really appreciate your continued contributions to the CSJ community. So how do you tell if an ENTP girl is mature or not? Like, it's so interesting. I actually get questions like this on a regular basis, although it's not really specific to a particular gender per se. But really, it comes down to how much her self-discipline is really developed when it comes to introverted sensing. Is she willing to put in the hard work, or is she kind of trying to put on a mask and make it look like she has talent, even though she doesn't really have that much talent? Because talent is not something that's really innate or inborn to an introverted sensor. They have to learn their talent, whereas talent is more natural to an extroverted sensor, etc. But again, maturity does not necessarily have anything to do with talent. But the highest sign of maturity within any ENTP is basically their ability to endure hardship. That is like the number one thing. Their ability to endure hardship. The reason why is because making sure that your bills are paid on time, making sure that you're doing your laundry, all of these, that you're being responsible and having all these responsibilities, you have to utilize a form of self-discipline or a form of endurance to be able to get to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, I am personally responsible, I can handle that, etc. But if an ENTP has no clue what self-discipline is, that's kind of like really a bad thing. Furthermore, you have to, when you're looking at maturity of like a person, you have to look at, like, if they're a man, the mature, you have to utilize the mature masculine model, which is king, warrior, magician, lover. And if they are a woman, you have to use the mature feminine model, which is queen, mother, matron, and lover. And these four archetypes of the mature feminine are some of the most misunderstood things on the internet. And I recommend, for those of you listening or watching, go to the YouTube channel, the CSJ YouTube channel, and go to season 13. It's a particular playlist that people barely watch. The least watched playlists are season 4, season 6, and season 13 on the YouTube channel, but they are by like hands down the absolute most valuable. And you actually go to like the individual episodes and you're like, why does the view count is so low? Why does like nobody watch this? It's because they come in and watch season 3, because that's what most people watch, is season 3. And they're watching season 3, and then they just watch one video and then they move on. Or they get the link to the personality test and they take the test and then they move on, and they don't really go any deeper than that. But season 4, season 6, and season 13 are extremely important. And season 13 defines the mature masculine, and it defines the mature feminine, etc. And in the context of an ENTP woman, if we're going to define the mature feminine, let's do that, because we haven't really discussed much of the mature feminine on this channel as we should. So I will break it down for you right now. So based on that, the first archetype is known as queen archetype, and this is when a woman is an ENTP woman specifically, because she has expert intuition hero. Expert intuition is all about one's desirability and how desirable they are. So the ENTP woman, in order to reach queen, to a point where she is chosen by her king, chosen by a man who's hopefully at least 10 years older than her, and has a job in his own place, in his own life, in his own purpose, and highly respected, and very good performer, and it makes her feel safe, etc. But definitely somebody that a lot of women would want to be with, because don't forget, folks, that you know how attraction works between men and women is that it's mostly based on, hey, if a man is attractive to a bunch of women, then a woman would be attracted to him, basically. So a man's attractiveness is relative, based on, okay, do multiple women desire him? Okay, yes, he's a scarce resource, therefore he is far more attractive to any particular woman, basically. And it's no different than with an ENTP woman because they understand how desirability actually works the most because they have extrovert intuition hero. And an ENTP woman needs to go out of her way to become as desirable as possible, which means she has to have the self-discipline to measure her food on a regular basis, like to the gram. Like seriously, measure your food. If you're not measuring your food, then it doesn't matter how much you go to the gym. It's not going to be going there. Now, this is why Weight Watchers is actually, it actually works because most of the measurements have been translated into a point system, so you don't have to spend all the extra effort of doing MyFitnessPal, etc. But ENTP women are triple systematic, and they can actually develop a nice system, basically, and they're also introverted sensing inferior, so they're kind of more often than most people willing to eat the same thing every single day for the most part. And this will allow them to create a system pretty easily to go into MyFitnessPal, calculate their macronutrients. If you don't know how to calculate your macronutrients, look up the Legion Athletics macronutrient calculator, basically. It'll help you, and make sure you're choosing 40% of your calories is protein, and and then you could go with what it recommends for carbohydrates, etc. If you're a very heavy set ENTP woman, I'd actually recommend doing 40% protein, 7% carbohydrates on that calculator. Then everything else should be fat, basically. And then also make sure you set the calculator to assume that you are sedentary, as in you're not exercising at all. You don't even have an office job. It would just make the calculator think that you're literally sitting at home on your couch all day, 24 hours a day, and do it that way because you get the maximum effect out of it and the most accurate macronutrient measurement for you, essentially. And then after that, like, go to the gym about 4 times a week. Start off with some whole full body supersets. Do like 3 or 4 superset lifts, up to like 5 sets per, and then eventually you can start to isolate using supersets with different muscle groups on different days. But at minimum, get into the gym 4 days a week, and then every single day make sure you're getting in enough steps, about 8 to 10,000 steps, which usually translates loosely to above 4 miles, basically, of walking. To track that, get an Apple Watch. Taking care of your physique is super important as an ENTP because it really increases that desirability factor within your expert intuition hero, and it causes people to desire you. And to reach queen archetype as an ENTP woman, you want to become as desirable as possible. Because here's the reality of the situation. All human beings are shallow. They really are, and aesthetics really do mean that much. I mean, certain types don't really care as much about aesthetics because they're not as aware of aesthetics because of extroverted sensing trickster, for example, or even introverted sensing trickster, but that's literally only for ENJs and INPs, and they're kind of biased, and those are the people that would typically say that aesthetics don't matter. But to everybody else in the world, which is like the vast majority, aesthetics do matter, okay? So just recognize that when it comes to aesthetics, all human beings are just shallow, and instead of like rising up against that and saying that that's bad and evil, how about you just accept it and live your life that way? Because then you're able to hold yourself to a higher standard and have personal boundaries that you can enforce with other people. One, because you're holding yourself to a higher standard and making sure that you're healthy and you have a better physique, etc., especially when it comes to relationships. And then and then you become more pleasing, basically. And that's the thing. Women are not really conditioned. They used to be, but they're not really conditioned anymore to be pleasing to men, right? And this is something really important that an ENTP woman who's reaching maturity should kind of be aware of, especially when it comes to Effie Childs and being empathetic towards men and their struggles, while simultaneously making herself as desirable as possible. And obviously, this doesn't mean that she can't have her voice and use her TI parent to criticize the F out of her boyfriend or her husband or whoever she's in a sexual relationship with, that's perfectly fine. And chances are they're an FIT user and willing to listen to her anyway, so that's not an issue. Being queen doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't cause you to be weak. It actually takes a lot of personal strength for a woman to be willing to humble herself in the first place to actually become the queen archetype. It's a really big deal. And in terms of an ENTP woman, it is a huge sign of maturity because it shows you, a man, it shows a man that she has all of the self-discipline in the world to take care of herself, okay? This proves maturity to the man when an ENTP woman reaches queen archetype. After that, you have the mother archetype. Now, ENTP women, a sign of maturity for the mother archetype is that they understand that if they are in a monogamous relationship with a man, then she is expected to put her man above her children when she has children. Most women don't do that. In fact, actually, it's biologically incorrect for women to do that. But then again, biologically, monogamy is not really for the human race anyway. So if men are going against their biology to participate in monogamous relationships, then women need to deny their biology and put their men above their children. If they don't, well, guess what? The number one reason why men initiate divorce with women is because those women are putting their children above their man. And it's so funny because my mother-in-law told the story about how her mother, who was a woman in communist Russia, basically tell her specifically, like, yeah, by the way, you're pregnant with your first child. You might want to make sure you're putting your husband first, because if you don't, you're going to lose him. And this is from during the Cold War in the 1900s. So that's pretty awesome. And I think that's the number one lesson that an ENTP woman who's going after maturity would need to understand, that it is her duty to do when it comes to the mother archetype. But it's super super important to maintain that. Now, granted, an ENTP woman could still be an entrepreneur and whatnot, but being an entrepreneur, having her own business or having her own career is not as high a priority as queen and mother, etc. And another aspect, it's secondary, right? It's primary for men, but it's secondary for women. And it's interesting because I often get criticized for saying this, because even for myself, when I get in a relationship with a woman, I'm just like, yeah, I don't care if you work. I don't care. Just don't care. It's not a priority for me. I mean, I make enough money, or I could produce enough on my own. I mean, I'm an engineer. I do all these different things. I don't. It's no issue. It's optional. It's really optional. And a lot of men out there are like that. I would say most men out there just don't really care if their women work. And if they do, there might be external or extenuating nurtural circumstances, but from a nature standpoint, it's probably not that really big of a deal, right? So just something to understand, that it's important that an ENTP woman reaching maturity would be prioritizing certain things over others. And especially if this ENTP is entering into her most fertile years between 20 to 26, it's really important that she doesn't get screwed over by feminism by focusing everything on her career out of the gate. Because if she does, she could end up in her 30s and not really be able to conceive, or have birth defects, or create a lot of problems for having children in her 30s, etc. And the risk is extremely high. And it could be a problem. And then there's the matron archetype, which is actually the rarest archetype among women, and I would say it's also super rare among ENTP women, except it's not. I would say it, but I can't say that. The reason why is because I've seen ENTP women taking on the role of matron head on, and it's absolutely fantastic to see, because they're always trying to help their friends and give their friends, their girlfriends, a better tomorrow, a better future. They're very motivating. They're protective. They're being very supportive, and it's really nice to see the matron archetype really common among NTP women, especially ENTP women, etc. And that is definitely a sign of maturity, because fatherlessness within our culture has destroyed the matron archetype, and it's not really available to women. So women, if you're watching this, go out there, find an ENTP woman, get an ENTP friend, and help them help you with matron archetype, etc., so that you can utilize matron archetype, so that there can be more matrons of your types that aren't ENTPs. That would be awesome. And the final aspect of ENTP female maturity would be lover, where they are really grateful for everything that they have, and to the point where they're able to just straight up enjoy life instead of really going out of their way to participate in the rat race, etc., or the world system, etc. And this allows the ENTP woman to become super, super mega practical and be happy with very, very little, right? And that's ultimately what the lover archetype is all about. But again, I explain more of that in season 13 as I go into really into serious depth about what those archetypes look like and their different shadow archetypes and what the healthy version is and what the unhealthy version is, etc. So yeah, those are how maturity plays out, the mature feminine plays out within an ENTP female. I hope I was able to answer your question, Mr. Aiden, to that end. And folks, if you want to have your personality type verified by our coaching staff, please visit csjoseph.life/csverify and book your appointment to get verified. Otherwise, with all that being said, folks, I'll see you guys tonight.